Hey there, I'm Andy, and this is Cocktail Mode, the podcast where me and my co-host Dave reminisce about a classic video game. We will try and pair it with a classic cocktail. This time out, we're going to be talking about Chase HQ and all its sequels and spin-offs. And how else would you start a conversation about a game from 1988 than with this question? Have you played Burnout Paradise?
Yes.
The opening of Burnout Paradise, when Paradise City's coming on and the car starts up at the same time, is one of the best openings in all of video games. It's so good. It's just brilliant. I absolutely adore it. Yeah, I went through and finished the Ultimate Box version on the Switch a little while back. I played it on 360 originally, but just played the whole lot start to finish. Loved it. Brilliant. Still a brilliant game.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really good game. I remember playing it when it first came out on Steam. And it was just bonkers, wasn't it? Because I remember playing Burnout 3, I think it was, on the PlayStation 2. And that had like a weird sort of bullet time-esque car crash simulator mode.
It's all everyone ever talks about.
It was amazing. It was brilliant. You like line yourself up on the ramp, hit it, go into slow-mo mode, and then sort of move your car through the air into a oil tanker or something, and just see what destruction you could wreak.
And that's one of the reasons why Burnout Paradise didn't review brilliantly when it came out, because it didn't have that mode in it, and it was the first. I think it was the first Burnout to not have it. Well, it was that big open world thing, wasn't it? And I used to love it because. To me, a good open world game is you can't go from where you are to where you want to be because you get distracted by something. That's the best open world games. It's what the Just Cause games are like, the best ones. That's what Burnout Paradise is like. You think, right, I'm going to go over there and see what that icon is, and you get distracted by something along the way. And it's just brilliant. I love it. I could happily pick it up and start playing it right now. I mean, you could argue, couldn't you, that the whole Burnout thing and the whole where that became was a genesis of Chase HQ originally, couldn't you?
Well, I was thinking about this. Yeah, I think Chase HQ led to any other car combat style game. I can't think of anything before it. I could be wrong, but I can't remember playing anything else, like even retrospectively or MAME, that had that sort of mechanic, that idea behind it.
Oh, I mean, car combat Spy Hunter was pre Chase HQ.
That was more shooting, though, wasn't it? It was more of a vertical shoot 'em up where you happen to be in a car. Good game, though. Really good.
Arguably the game that will always come up. I will always crowbar it in, but Turbo Esprit was 1986, and that you were a police car having to ram other cars to beat them. But it's exactly, other than the fact it's an open world and you have to find the criminals first. Once you've found them, you have to bump into them, end the game, win. And you're even an undercover sports car when you're doing it. So basically, Chase HQ ripped off Turbo Esprit.
Fair enough.
End podcast, that's it. Done for today.
Mention a drink and off we can go. It is worth pointing out, though, that the first villain that you catch in Chase HQ is driving a Lotus Esprit.
Ralph the Idaho Slasher.
Yeah.
I know the next one is the New York Armed Robber, but I can't remember his name.
Bear with me several seconds while I remember it.
Clyde or something like that.
Carlos, the New York Armed Robber, was number 2.
That's him. Carlos.
Give me the yellow Lamborghini Countach. And then the Chicago Pushers in a silver Porsche 911. The LA Kidnapper in a blue Ferrari 288 GTO. And the Eastern Bloc Spy in an unidentified car, which is a red 928. The same as what you're driving.
Is that you and your mate Wikipedia again?
No, just brilliant off the top of my head.
Yeah. Just
from reading Wikipedia.
From all the times you've beaten Chase HQ.
From all the times I've read the Wikipedia page. No, I did play it. I did go back and play it quite a bit because I do love it. I do remember it very, very fondly. I think I remember it mostly from the Amstrad, interestingly. I definitely did play it in the arcades, but I think I remember it being quite hard. It's not now that you pick it up and play it, but I think as a kid, because I do remember there probably was a sit-down version, but I can only remember it as a stand-up one.
I don't think I've ever seen a sit-down version.
I struggled with a bit being not properly tall enough to stand and drive.
I'm with you. I don't remember ever seeing a sit-down version, but you're right. There probably was. Although Taito weren't the biggest company in the world, so I don't know. Like you, I remember it from the Spectrum, and we are both blessed with remembering two of the best versions. I was stunned when I watched a video comparing all the different versions of Chase HQ at what the Amstrad one was like, it looks amazing.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was really, really good.
Probably 48K Spectrum to Amstrad. The Amstrad would beat it hands down for just the presentation, but the sound on the 128 Spectrum version was great. It had the music and the some synthesized speech with
That's going to come out well.
Apologies to your eardrums, everybody. But yeah, I was genuinely, I've never seen an Amstrad game look that good and run that well either.
No, the Amstrad did have some really, really good games on it, and that is, like I say, a particular highlight. I remember that being a game that I did play a lot.
I beat the Spectrum version. I never beat the arcade version. I own now 5 different versions, including the 2 worst ones.
What are the worst ones?
But for some reason, despite the fact that, the Amiga and the ST were pretty good, and the Spectrum and the Amstrad were amazing for what they were, the Commodore 64 version is appalling. It's atrocious. Yeah, it's like crawlingly slow, horrible sound. Doesn't look as good as the Amstrad version or the Spectrum version.
Was it still Ocean Software?
I think so.
Could it have been a different company?
No, I think, Ocean Software was kind of an overarching thing, wasn't it? So
they did no end of arcade conversion.
Yeah, and I think they must have had sort of hundreds of people working on different things. So whoever did the Commodore 64 version did not do the Amstrad version or the Spectrum version. I'd be pretty sure of that. But it's just terrible.
Yeah.
The Game Boy version is abysmal as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you don't expect much from a Game Boy, but then
I don't really know the Game Boy, so I never really expect anything from it. I have no expectation from it. So.
But it's trying to do pseudo 3D driving games on that little thing. But the weird thing is, there's Chase HQ on the Game Boy, which is a business. It's bad anyway, right? And then the traffic, such as it is always the same car. There's only one of them on screen ever at the same time, and it just flashes down the screen so fast you can't even hope to move out of the way. Yeah. So you've just got to factor in hitting it into trying to beat the game for the 30 seconds you can tolerate it before turning off. It's like somebody's first ever attempt at trying to design a game. It's just terrible. But then a few years later, Super Chase HQ came out on the Game Boy, which is just Chase HQ again, but developed by somebody who was competent, because it's actually really good. I found this out and thought, I'll get that. 200 quid in box.
Ooh.
No, I won't get that.
Maybe not.
But yeah, I've got the terrible one. But there was another one. There was on the Game Boy Color, they had one that was called Secret Police, Chase HQ Secret Police.
Oh, okay.
And that started off with a map, and you had to place your units around the map to try and head off the criminals as they...
Oh, okay.
As their dots appeared, and then it went into the rest of the game after that. Which is very cool. But it's basically Turbo Esprit, a very basic version of Turbo Esprit again. Because Turbo Esprit, you spent most of the time in the early game looking at the map, saying, I'm here and the bad guys are there, and trying to drive and head them off. And as much as this you didn't drive, you just had to place your units. It's clearly the same inspiration. Did you say you play the arcade at all?
Yeah. I can remember quite fondly playing it. Probably on holiday. It was usually always on holiday, because you didn't tend to get the sort of convoluted control method games in the fair.
No.
It's very much stand-up joystick, limited space, cram as many in as you can. Yeah.
And they were usually quite old, weren't they? Because there would be cheaper ones. So you'd still...
Well, they used to do the board swapping thing as well. So you'd get a generic cabinet, but you could put a new board in it. So something with a dedicated control method, like a steering wheel and a gear stick and a something else, kind of sticks to that one game, and you can't ever put another one in it. So they get a new game. We don't need a new cabinet. We'll just get the board, whack it in, and away we go. Because I'm pretty sure the people around the fair didn't buy them legitimately.
I'm pretty sure you're probably right.
Especially as you used to get bootleg versions of Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, any sorts of madness goes. But yeah, I always remember seeing things where it was the wrong game in the cabinet as well. That was like a Pac-Man cabinet, and it had Space Invaders in. That was fairly common in fairs in particular. But for some reason, I'm fairly sure I only ever saw Chase HQ in Motorway Service Stations. And they do tend to lean towards driving games in motorway service stations, which just seems weird to me. I mean, I don't drive, but you just spent 4 hours driving, so you need to pull over for some McDonald's and a piss. You don't think, I'll do some more driving while I'm here.
I think the arcade cabinets are more for the kids than the people driving, buddy.
They're missing out.
Yeah.
But that's the only time, I'm almost certain the only time I ever saw it was, and after as well, a good time after I'd already played it a lot on the Spectrum before I saw it out in the world. I think the Spectrum version came out in 89 because conversions took no time back in the day, did they?
No, not at all.
I think I must have seen it on the arcade a long time after that. Well, not a long time, but, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
But I didn't see, because, pre the days of YouTube and anything else, I never saw another version other than screenshots in magazines at the time. I don't know anyone who had it on the Amiga or anything, even, Master Systems and Mega Drives when they started to appear, and the weird versions of it that appeared on those. Just never saw it on anything else. I only ever saw it run on the Spectrum until emulation came along and YouTube and all that convenience.
My assumption would be that anybody who had it on something like the Spectrum or the Amstrad or the Amiga, when they went to Mega Drive or a SNES, wouldn't buy it if they'd already had it.
That's a fair point.
Because it'd be kind of pointless, wouldn't it? You go from a computer with a game that came out sort of 89 or whatever, 2-3 years later you buy a new console, you see that old game that you used to have on your Amstrad, and you think, nah, I'm not paying 40 quid for that.
No, absolutely. Yeah, good point. The variation in quality of all the different versions is, you could probably take very small steps from one to the other and work your way up from unplayable to incredible. It's so like, because there are just so many versions of this game, there must be 15 versions of it easy, including Chase HQ 2.
Yeah, which I'd never played.
I didn't even know it existed.
I played SCI,
yeah, which
is technically Chase HQ 2.
Oh, I saw a thing about this, about why it's not called Chase HQ 2.
Oh, okay.
Apparently it's because sort of as soon as it was out, they started working on a sequel, more or less, as soon as it was, out and making money. And so SCI was put out while Chase HQ was still fairly sort of current, and they didn't want people to not play Chase HQ because SCI... And that happened again with, I forget what the first sequel after SCI was called.
Special Chase...
Yes.
Something.
So yeah, and they kept doing it, and even the Run and Gun spin-off, you played that. It's very much like Rolling Thunder.
I did actually. I was going to come to that eventually. Crime City, I used to play. They had it in Thurston's in Bedford, and I never knew it was a spin-off of Chase HQ until like 3 days ago.
I never knew it, but I probably saw it. But it was it's pretty generic, isn't it? I mean,
oh yeah, and it's very, very unfair. I mean, I played it again on MAME recently, just for a bit of a nostalgia trip, and it's horrifically unfair. It's just stuff will kill you that you can't dodge, you can't shoot it unless you know it's coming. So it's one of those arcade games that's very much like, we're just going to kill you now because you might put more money in.
Super Chase Criminal Termination was the game after SCI.
Pithy.
Yes. But that was converted to the SNES. So the SNES one, which is called Chase HQ, it is called Super Chase HQ. Completely different game to the Game Boy game called Super Chase HQ, because why make it simple for anybody?
Nintendo did that though, didn't they? Anything that came out on the SNES was super. Whatever it was super blah blah blah.
Yeah, and Super Superman.
Wasn't Superman on the SNES one of the worst reviewed games of all time?
I think that's the N64.
Was it?
Yeah, the N64 Superman is, like, to use terminology way outside what a man of my age should be saying. It's very meme-worthy.
Fuck me.
No thanks.
Meme-worthy. Ugh.
Yeah. Well, we talk about all these different games. Yeah. So, yeah, Super Chase HQ on the set, and that was first person perspective, and you couldn't change it. It was you were inside the car the whole time.
Yeah, I read up a little bit about it, but haven't found it to play it yet.
Chase HQ 2 I played a bit of. I sent you the file, didn't I?
Yeah, I did. I never even knew that came out.
No. Very
odd.
2007, which is mental, isn't it?
I know. I couldn't believe when I saw the year on it, I thought that can't be right.
Yeah, that's like 20 years after the original almost.
Yeah, it's less than a year between Chase HQ and SCI.
Yeah.
and then it's like 20 years to the next one.
It's fallen down a bit of a generic hole, that sequel, the Chase HQ2. It was all right. It was good fun, and I liked if you've not played it, you get to sort of, it's the same feel of it. There are different pathways. It's very much a straight road, isn't it? But you get to dive off to the side. And it's very much of that sort of PS2, Xbox 360 crossover era in the looks, in the style and everything, isn't it?
Yeah. I did play it. It didn't work for very long.
Did it not?
No, it had some weird thing with the camera where the camera basically picked a spot and stayed there. The car carried on.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm driving a car that's a mile down the road from where the camera has just fallen off the back of it. So yeah, bit glitchy, but I did enjoy it. It was a bit odd. Got to the second level, which was a monster truck, which I thought, well, this will be fun.
Yeah. It's very much that sort of Larry early 2000s style of game, even to the extent it's Jackie Degg as Nancy, isn't it?
Jackie Degg.
Jackie Degg.
I know the name Jackie Degg.
Voted the #1 page 3 model of all time. Yeah.
I didn't spot that.
Well, I think it's because to make Nancy appear on that cracked version of Chase HQ2 that I sent you, you have to download a Windows Media version of the era, and then she appears in, because it's live action video. And it's very quiet as well. You can't really hear what she's saying very well about adjusting the volume settings. But yeah, random little. I mean, the history of page 3 models and games is, could be a podcast all on its own. You had the Barbarian games had Maria Whittaker, didn't they? She was,
and the bloke on the poster is Wolf from Gladiator.
He is, yeah.
I've always known that's one of those random facts I've always had in my head.
Yeah, it's mental, and
did you know that's come back?
Well,
Gladiators is on right now. It's on BBC One.
It's not on right now.
Well, not right now, no. It depends on if you're listening to this on a Saturday night at 7:00.
Yeah, I did know that it's on because, to my eternal shame, I've been watching it.
Is it any good?
Of course, it's never been any good. It's shit. But I'm if I'm watching TV on a Saturday, which is normally only match of the day, there's not much else to watch. I don't want to watch anything I have to engage my brain for. And you can get less brain engaging than Gladiators.
I don't know. There's a few modern quiz shows that I'd put to the top of that list. Deal or No Deal? People open boxes. Fucking genius. Whoever came up with that. So what's the budget for making a show? I don't know, 30 quid? It's like something out of the 70s, isn't it?
The thing about Deal or No Deal to me is that if somebody who's fatalistic, I'm fairly fatalistic, and there are people in the world and cultures who are fairly, I think the Japanese tend to be quite fatalistic, or certainly were historically. That game would provide no entertainment for them whatsoever, because they just go, well, I've either got it or I haven't.
Yeah.
There's nothing. Can we just skip to the end now and does everyone open their boxes and can we move on? I've got somewhere else to be. It's just...
Chase HQ, played it a bit in the arcades, played it a lot in the Amstrad. SCI, played exclusively in arcades. I can't remember it ever actually making it to a home console. If it did, I never played it.
I think I may have tried a few over the years. I think most versions of SCI are pretty bad.
Because it's a difficult thing to replicate. Because in the arcade you had the wheel, the pedals, the gear stick with the boost thing, and the triggers for the gun were on the steering wheel. So it's a difficult thing to replicate on any controller bar the N64, because that takes 4 people to operate properly.
SCI scored 94% in Your Sinclair magazine.
Did it really?
I remember it being really bad. I tell you what, on that, I wanted to see all the different versions, and the easiest way to see all the different versions when you only own 5 is to just watch somebody on YouTube do it, right? Because let's not muck about, that's what we all do. It's really interests me that at the time, it was acknowledged that the Spectrum was probably the best version, and everyone was like, how is this possible that the 48K Spectrum is making a better game than the ST and the Amiga? By everybody, not just by Spectrum fanboys. And obviously, if the Amstrad fan base had a voice, it was so quiet that nobody heard it. There weren't a lot of you, were there, Dave? Is what I'm saying.
It was me and 6 other blokes. The Amstrad is the forgotten computer of that era.
Yeah,
it really is. Because everybody loved the Spectrum, and everybody loudly enjoyed the Commodore 64 and the ST and Amiga, and the Amstrad just sat there in the middle, being better than both the Spectrum and the Commodore 64. But we never said anything about it. We just quietly enjoyed our superior versions.
Do you know what I think it's like? And I say this as a massive fan of the machine I'm about to compare it to. Because it was for probably our international listeners who were too busy playing terrible games on the NES to enjoy the ZX Spectrum. But the ZX Spectrum, the Amstrad CPC464 and the Commodore 64 were like the free 8-bit consoles. Not consoles, computers. All of them had keyboards. They were computers, as Dave was about to jump in and tell me.
No, busy drinking.
But the Amstrad was like, if you think of the Game Boy and the Game Gear, the Amstrad was the Lynx.
Yeah, a far superior machine.
Yeah, it was. Capability-wise, it should have been obliterating the other two. But for some reason, a lot of the time, it just didn't turn out that way. It was never really given the love, was it? I don't think, by developers.
I think because it was the last to come out of the three.
Could well be. So
anybody who was going to buy a computer in that era already had one.
And it wasn't cheap, was it? Because of...
No, you had to buy the monitor with it.
Yeah.
Whereas both the others, you just hooked up to a TV. So instantly it was a bit more expensive.
Yeah.
There were two options on the monitor, green screen or colour. Colour added, however much more to it. But yeah, it was a brilliant computer. I loved it. Very, very fond memories of my Amstrad.
I not really relevant, but I have very fond memories of the Atari. The Atari Lynx is, I think, if you look at the number of games in the machine and how many of those games are good, I reckon the Atari Lynx has probably got one of the best ratios out there for anything. It didn't have a huge number of games, but so many of them are fantastic. And it was doing arcade conversions better than everything else around. I think it had come out in, was it 90, the Lynx?
I'm going to say 90 or 91.
Yeah, and it was doing arcade conversion stuff. It's the version it had a stun run. It was mind-boggling. And I noticed, listening back to our last podcast, I used the term mind-boggling rather too often. I might have to put it on the drinking game.
You say mind-boggling a lot these days.
Yeah, it's got Stun Runner on it, on the Lynx. And you think this was out at the same time we were still playing Amstrads and Spectrums. And it's got a full-on 3D polygon game running at ridiculous speeds of Stun Runner on a handheld.
Wasn't it a very small screen, though? So, like, resolution-wise, it was
I think it's
not
like
actually pushing much.
320 by 240 or something like that. But I don't think monitors were much different. And 14-inch TVs, not that the size of the TV matters, but everyone just played on 14-inch TVs.
The output resolution of anything is going to have a massive impact on the frame rate.
I still think the Lynx is a magnificent machine.
I think they're great. I never really got much playtime with one. I think I knew one person with it, but similarly, I knew one person with a Game Gear. Yeah. Everybody who had a handheld had a Game Boy.
Yeah, and I think that's very much a UK thing as well. I think it was, as much as it's interesting, because as I sort of just alluded to a second ago, the NES never really did, and they call it the NES, and they like to spell it out over the pond, but what we call the NES, it never really appeared over here. Everyone had Sega Master Systems. You know, the Sega Master System was the competition against the Amstrad and the Commodore and the Spectrum, and the NES didn't really appear. But then in the 16-bit era, it was a bit more mixed. There were lots of Mega Drives and lots of SNESes about. But the handheld thing, you're absolutely right. Everyone had a Game Boy. I don't think I even saw a Game Gear until I saw one in a shop 20 years ago, maybe, once it was already long dead and gone.
Yeah, I knew one person with a Game Gear. I remember going into Dixon's on a Saturday for about 2 hours and playing on Tetris on the Game Boys. Never bought one. Never really wanted one. Quite happy to play on one.
Yeah, I got a Game Boy sort of as soon as it was out, but not long after. I don't think I had to wait like a million years or anything. But I was still using it and playing it. 2001, I remember being on holiday in Corfu playing a Game Boy. You know, it's just like, what else was it? I don't know when the PSP came out, but everything just got more complicated, didn't it? And it got harder to be as portable as the Game Boy was. And I think for me personally, I know you don't do a lot of handheld stuff, but you lose something when a handheld can perform as well as or nearly as well as the main systems. You lose something there, and you lose the opportunity to come up with something special just for the Game Boy, for example, or whatever it is. And there are some fantastic games. There was sort of around that sort of time, actually around sort of 2001, I think, there was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game came out on everything, multi-format game, to tie into one of the animated films, the CGI animated films. It's a film tie and it's coming out and everything. Most of those games are awful. Because that couldn't appear on the Game Boy Advance, the Game Boy Advance got a side-scrolling beat-em-up that's absolutely brilliant. One of the classiest and most bringing back that sort of game, like way ahead of time, way ahead of the Castle Crashers.
Oh yeah, I've never played that.
The sort of, when they started to come back, sort of, it was Castle Crashers at the forefront of that. But way before that, this plucky little Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. And it's great. And it was because you couldn't just port the atrocity that it made on everything else to the Game Boy Advance. You had to do something else. And by doing something else, you did something much better. The Game Boy Color's got a couple of fantastic Tomb Raider games that play a lot like Flashback or Prince of Persia. The side-scrolling and because obviously you can't do Tomb Raider on those machines.
Nor should you try.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? And it's when you try, because when that capability comes along, that's when you start trying to replicate that sort of thing, and it ends up being shit.
Well, we said about this before, didn't we? I think the last episode. If you've got a very sort of limited scope for what you can do with something, sometimes that leads to a more creative solution to things.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the Game Boy games were like that. They were simple, but the gameplay was very, very good. Graphically, they were simple because they had to be simple. Whereas if you look back at older consoles, sort of like the early Atari things, everybody loves a console made of wood, but there's not enough wood in consoles these days.
There really isn't.
But no, they would, most of the time with the early, very, very early stuff, they were trying to copy what had come out in the arcade, because that was all that existed. So there'd be the odd original title, but there'd be a lot of arcade clones, and most of the time they're like, well, that's what it looks like, so let's try and make it look like that. So they're sort of reaching beyond the possibilities of what that machine could do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas I think with the Game Boy, a lot of the games on it were like, okay, this is our screen size, this is the resolution we've got, and it's quite simple.
Yeah.
So do the best you can with that. And it just so happened that a lot of people churned out a lot of really good games on it.
But I think, to a certain extent, you've touched on why those Amstrad and Spectrum versions of Chase HQ were better, because they knew they couldn't replicate the arcade game. You can't get even close to it on those machines. So you start from scratch, and you say, this is the idea, this is the concept, this is what you have to do. Obviously you have to rebuild these games from scratch for these things anyway. And that's where I was going when I was saying all these different versions. And it really surprised me when you see these videos and these people comparing versions, that now they'll look at the Spectrum and the Amstrad version, and it'll be way down the bottom of the list, like behind the Amiga and the ST and the console versions, because it doesn't look like the arcade. Whereas in the time when it was current, in 1989, 1990, I think that was less important, and people that realised that what you wanted was the gameplay experience. That's what you the better gameplay experience and the better conversion. That's how you measured that. So the Spectrum version with all of 3 colours on the screen was, as far as I'm concerned, better than the PC Engine version, which looks amazing, really. I've got the PC Engine version. It's really, really good.
Well, one of the things I would say on that is that I'm pretty sure, I can't remember specifically, but I'm pretty sure the Amstrad version is quite a limited colour palette, but runs at a very good sort of frame rate. Or what we would now call a frame rate. Back then, you said it's fast because you didn't know the term frame rate.
No, it was never mentioned.
But that's the spirit, and if you can capture that speed element, specifically in a driving game, which a lot of the sort of more technologically advanced systems might not necessarily go for. They're thinking, oh, this is what it looks like in the arcade. Let's make it look like that.
Yeah.
And you might lose 10, 20 frames a second or whatever. Yes, that's a guess. I've never played the 16-bit versions. They might be amazing. But if you can get the speed element right, the graphics and what it looks like doesn't really matter. It's the feel of it. It's specifically with driving games. It has to feel fast. I'm assuming Chase HQ came out after Outrun.
Yeah. Outrun was, I think, 85, and Chase HQ is 88.
Is it really 85? Wow.
You're going to Wikipedia it now and check my thinking. But
I'm going to look at a different website.
Please do, but my actual brain told me that it's 85.
86.
Ah, shit it.
And you're apparently a fan.
86 has got to be one of the best years for video games ever. And I'm saying that just on the basis that both Outrun and Turbo Esprit came out in 86, and those are two of my favourite games of all time.
You've somehow shoehorned Turbo Esprit into every episode of this podcast so far.
Well, you know,
if we do the Tomb Raider episode and you start talking about fucking Turbo Esprit, I'm going to start thinking something's up. Are you sitting on like every physical copy of it and they're all on eBay?
No, that would be good. I've got Turbo Esprit
that would be good.
Twice, because it's only out on the Spectrum and the C64, and I don't like the way the C64 version looks. I found the C64 graphics always looked really blocky. I think it had a low resolution mode that a lot of developers used, because I found them quite often look really blocky.
I love to think, as an Amstrad owner, that it was an inferior machine, and that's why it looks shit. I genuinely don't know. I always used to think I didn't choose the Amstrad.
No.
It was bought for me one Christmas or one birthday. I don't know. It would be a Christmas birthday because, you know, you being a December baby, you'll remember that kind of bullshit.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
No, it's for your birthday and Christmas next year. But wait, what? I'm in debt. I'm in present debt for this fucking thing. It better be amazing. I remember when I got my Amstrad. Actually, I got this pack of like 18 games with it, and they were fucking awful. But there were a few absolute gems in there. There was Daley Thompson's Decathlon,
the joystick breaker. The
joystick breaker. There was Hunchback and Hunchback 2, which were basically Atari 2600 games. But they were really good. They're very early like platform games. Later
on, because I started with a Spectrum 48 that my brother got from somebody. And later on, I got a 128 and a 128 plus 2A, and it was the gun packs. It come with the light gun.
Oh, yeah.
And that was like, comes with a light gun and 6 games. And yeah, every single one of them is fucking terrible. I don't know if that was in the box, but it came with Operation Wolf.
Oh, yeah.
Or Operation Wolf you could play with light gun. And, you know, the Spectrum version of that wasn't great, but it was entertaining enough. It was, because it's very much almost like a puppet show, isn't it? It's like, it is. It's like shooting at Punch and Judy.
Like paper targets popping up.
Yeah. Which, do you know, again, one of those things you find out when you're researching, but Operation Thunderbolt was called Operation Thunderbolt for the same reason SCI was called SCI, because they didn't want to call it Operation Wolf 2 because it came out so quickly.
Yeah. Well, the big difference was it was 2-player. That was like the only difference as well, wasn't it?
Double segue though, because the guy who developed Operation Thunderbolt was the same guy who developed Chase HQ and SCI. Yeah, double segue. Enough. Loving that work, right?
Jeff, good old Jeff.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah, all those Japanese dudes called Jeff. He was one of those guys. I think in a previous episode you mentioned SCI and I said it was rubbish.
I think in the deleted scenes of an episode I mentioned SCI because my particular SCI story is when I was going on holiday on a coach and we stopped at a services, and because I was only 14, thought we had a lot more time than we actually had. So I go into the arcade bit at the services, put £1 in SCI, which is like 5 credits back in those days.
Absolutely.
I start playing it because it was amazing. It was brilliant. I think it was the first time I ever played it. It might have been the only time I ever played it in the arcade. Now that I think about it. And yeah, I'm driving away. Oh, it's Chase HQ, but with a gun. Brilliant. Love this. My dad comes over. I was like, we've got to go. So, no, I've just put £1 in. Can't go. I've got like 5 more credits. No, we're on a coach. We're not in a car. We have to go because the coach will fucking leave without us. Bollocks. So I'm sort of being dragged away from this arcade machine. I've just found the nearest person. It's like, there's £1 in that machine. There's £1. Don't waste it. Don't waste the credits. There's desperate need for the money that I put into it to be used.
Somebody must
by
enjoy
anybody. Somebody must use my credits. But we said it before about the arcade etiquette of not using other people's credits and things. Yeah. But in a service station environment where it's like, yeah, we got to go. Fuck.
Yeah, that's it.
I have to find someone who can take on my game.
Yeah, it's a great story. But I'm fairly sure that when we talked about that before, I said that SCI wasn't very good, and I need to hold my hands up and say, but I think I'm wrong. I think I remembered it poorly because I went back and
you are wrong.
Went back and played it on MAME, and it's very, very good. I have an issue with the amount of noise. It's a very, very noisy game, and I know arcade games should be noisy. That's what arcade games really should. Without the noise, they are nothing. But it's a bit too noisy because it's constant bang, 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 bang. You're always shooting, like always. You never stop. It's endless.
Maybe you should.
Because it's because unlike Chase HQ, because Chase HQ you race to the guy and then you ram the guy. In SCI, the sort of henchmen are there from pretty much word go, aren't they? Yeah. And so you're always shooting at something. It's always going on, and it's just it's
bikers with Molotov cocktails. The least likely thing you will ever see. Because who in their right mind is ever going to ride down the road on a Harley Davidson with a lit Molotov cocktail in there?
Well, just in case, you mean?
Yeah, and even if you haven't lit it yet, how the fuck are you at whatever stupid speed you're supposed to be doing, 240 kph, whatever that translates to in miles? You're not going to light anything traveling at that speed down the road. I do love arcade games and games in general for their ridiculous bullshit. But yeah, I've got to draw the line somewhere. No, I love it. I do love SCI. I genuinely think SCI is one of the very few examples of a sequel that changed only a few things but made it a much, much better game.
Ooh.
As much as I do enjoy Chase HQ and I do love it and it does have a very special place in my heart, I do think SCI was a better game. I think the addition of the gun and the addition of the enemies throughout the chase section really made it a better game. Because basically that first opening section of Chase HQ is chase up to the villain, and it's just a bit of outrun for 45 seconds or 50 seconds or whatever it is.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because there are a few games that have like sort of two parts. So you do one thing and then you get to a point, and then what was the one I thought of? Because I thought of this. I thought that is the key difference, isn't it? SCI, you're immediately in it. But there's a motorbike game. It was called Racing Hero, I think. And you basically, it's a motorbike game. In the first half of every race, you were going down streets, and then the second half, you were in a race. So it's almost like you're having to race to the track and then do the actual race afterwards. Really sort of nice looking hang-on style racing game. I'm pretty sure it's called Racing Hero.
I'm looking at it now.
Good game. Did you ever play Techno Cop?
Oh, on the Atari Lynx?
No, that's Electro Cop.
It's an odd thing you say that, because I thought to myself, Techno Cop on the Atari Lynx was like Chase HQ. Obviously it wasn't. The
most famous version of Techno Cop is on the Mega Drive, because it was one of those notorious games. It was very gory in sections, and so in a very sort of 16-bit pixelated way, it was sort of infamous rather than famous. But it was the first part of the game, you drove to a crime scene, and the second part of the game was a side-scrolling shooter, like a run and gun. And in that, you drove what was quite clearly a Lamborghini Countach. Did you ever play, in your time on MAME, a game called AB Cop?
Yes.
Because this was on my Hidden Gems of MAME blog. I mentioned it as one of the games on there. But that's very, very Chase HQ as well. Like I I cannot believe that it didn't come out after Chase HQ and benefit a lot in development from going, let's sit on a AB stands for air bike. And so you were on basically a...
Yeah. I've played that. In fact, I think I played that in the arcade. Yeah, really? I remember that.
For our listeners, I genuinely did in 2013 play every single game on MAME. And when you take out the duplicates and all the Mahjong games and all that, you're still left with about 9,000 games. And I genuinely played every single one. And just to discover the actual hidden gems, and AB Cop. You're on a speeder bike and you're chasing down criminals that you then have to ram into. Very, very clearly influenced by Chase HQ, but the criminals that you got to in the end were like enormous. Like, no, they were massive, like whip-wielding monsters on weird tank devices. It was all very sort of futuristic and odd, but a lot of fun. And really, when you're talking about a sense of speed, there was a lot of sense of speed on that one. Brilliant game.
I remember playing it based on your recommendation on your blog.
I'm fairly sure if you go onto, and you can test this for me now, Dave, because I've obviously got my own history. If you type into Google MAME hidden gems, I think the first hit is a Reddit post with me pimping out my finished spreadsheet of MAME hidden gems.
It's on Reddit. Some twat called Jaguar Wong.
There he is. That's this guy. Top hit on the internet. Yeah, so that's for our listeners. If you do that, you will find a link to my old blog. And it's actually what it does is it links to a spreadsheet where I listed out all of what were in 2013 hidden gems for MAME. And links to my blog post about them if you can be bothered, or you can just go and play them yourself. Did you see, I forget where I found it, I think it was Moby Games when I was doing my research. They list as related games to Chase HQ a PlayStation game called Ray Tracers.
No, I missed that one.
As far as I can tell, it's got no relation to Chase HQ other than the fact it was released by Taito.
So it's not related?
Yeah, it's not. But it's the same concept. Graphical style is very much like sort of mid-Ridge Racer. Very sort of polygonal still. PlayStation 1, as you can imagine. And I think PlayStation 1, the visual style of PlayStation 1 games is having a bit of a moment. I think there are a few retro-inspired games that are taking that style rather than going for 16-bit and pixels and all that. The PlayStation 1 is sort of having its day in the sun. And that game, when you look at it, has got that real PlayStation 1 vibe about it. It's good fun, and it does. It is basically Chase HQ. You chase down criminals, you ram them until they stop, but with actual, 3D graphics rather than what you had in all of the Chase HQ games, because it kind of missed that generation. And then you get to Chase HQ 2 at this weird 2007 junction. Just to get back, Dave, to that assertion you made about SCI being a better game than Chase HQ. I disagree. I think Chase HQ is a better game. But I'm not. It's not a hill I'm prepared to die on. I think they're both. I would now see that they are both good games. I like the way Chase HQ looks better. I think it's got a sort of a neater, more stylized look. I like the I think probably the simplicity of it, because I'm quite a simple human being.
I was going to say, is it simplicity? Is SCI like yours? Used to take the piss out of me whenever I'd look at a game and go, you know what this game needs. And then add some ridiculous feature that the game probably didn't need.
Yes. No. Yeah, you're absolutely
right. You're very much of the simpler is better.
Yeah.
Approach to game design. And
I think, for lack of sounding really wanky, I think there's just a purity to it. I think that Chase HQ has got a singular sort of thing, and I think we mentioned Outrun briefly. We don't want to go into Outrun too much because it will come up on its own at some point. But I'll tell you what's interesting about Outrun. Relevant. So I put in the hopes to sort of, I want some feedback on what we're doing. I like feedback. I think it's a good thing, even if it happens to be negative. Apparently, the ongoing loop of music on the last episode was quite annoying to a lot of people. So I won't be doing that on this one.
It's called a bed, and it was fucking horrible.
So. But yeah, so because I want that sort of feedback, I do want us to get better, and so I put a link on a Discord I'm on. It's a very small Discord. It's probably got about 20 people on it. There's a guy on there, Rack, hi if you're listening, I hope you are, mate, who pointed out in the Street Fighter episode, he said that when it comes to fighting games, there was before Street Fighter and then there's after Street Fighter. It was like this epochal moment in fighting games. And that's what Outrun is. There was before Outrun, and then there was after Outrun. It's a line in the sand. Without it, genuinely, Chase HQ wouldn't exist without Outrun, because
that's true.
Outrun came out. Taito decided that they were going to create a competitor to Outrun, and that was called Full Throttle, otherwise in some regions known as Top Speed. Came out, and it is Taito's response to Outrun, and it was directed by the guy who went on to direct Chase HQ. And more than that, not only is this, I mean, it's okay. It's not anywhere near as good as Outrun, Full Throttle, but what it does is it takes that mode of driving games and adds free turbo boosts, which again later show up in Chase HQ. And what it's also got, I was a bit fascinated by it. There are posters for other games dotted along the roadside in Full Throttle. There's also a poster for Miami Vice. So this geezer, Jeff, as we have dubbed him, back at that time, there wasn't that a lot of things about with a white dude and a black dude driving a sports car. So that clearly influenced him.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the original rabbit hole I went down for the cocktail was very much what did they used to drink on Miami Vice,
right?
Or what did the Tom Selleck and his moustache used to drink on Magnum PI?
Yeah,
because I thought I can't think of a cocktail for this at all. There must be some sort of something that they drank,
yeah,
and there wasn't.
Was it not? Did it not have a thing?
I mean, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of watching actual episodes of Miami Vice because it's shit. It was shit back then. It's still shit now. Always has been, always will be. Launched one career, ruined another. I can't remember his name. Is it Tubbs? Tubbs?
Yeah, Crockett and Tubbs they were called.
Yeah, the black guy, not Don Johnson.
Yeah.
Went on to have a career as like an evangelist.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, when Miami Vice finished, he went into televangelism.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's either one or two episodes on Miami Vice directed by Abel Ferreira, who directed Driller Killer and a whole load of them.
Jesus.
So, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I would, if you'd have said Michael Mann,
yeah,
I'd have thought, yeah, that's probably
well,
good.
Didn't he remake it? Wasn't there a
Yeah.
film? And in the mid-2000s, there was a new film of Miami Vice, and I think he directed it.
Yeah. We'll say yes.
Let's say yes and move on. But
edit that back in as yes, it was.
Absolutely. But yeah, I just think it's interesting because I didn't watch a lot of Miami Vice, but I don't think car chases were a big part of it, really. I know that obviously it's...
Oh, no, they definitely were.
Yeah.
Definitely were. They drove around in a white Ferrari Testarossa specifically. And I've always assumed that Chase HQ was an attempt to make Miami Vice the game without using the license of Miami Vice.
And I think that's fairly sort of... You couldn't be too far wrong, could you? And again, with this geezer, on his previous game, putting in a poster from Miami Vice, and he's clearly a fan. Especially if you look at the box art for the 8-bit, the Ocean games, basically the Ocean version of the game. I think as much as Crockett looks like Chris Christopherson for some reason, the black guy is basically. And I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, black guy from Miami Vice. It's really dismissive to just call you the black guy from Miami Vice, but.
No, wait. It's blah blah blah. Philip Michael Thomas. I knew it was three names.
Philip Michael Thomas. Apologise, Philip, for not looking that up previously. I'm sure you're listening and furious with us right now. But it's clearly him on the box, or it might.
I hope he is.
Yeah, that would be great. Of all the people listening, he's the one.
Jesus Christ, he's not dead, but it has got 11 children. Not much going on after Miami Vice finished.
So how did you spend your time after the hit series Miami Vice finished?
Interesting you say that. He's in Grand Theft Auto Vice City. He's Lance Vance. Or Lance Vance.
Lance? I feel like I knew that.
Who is one of the best characters in that game.
He's great. He's brilliant, yeah. But it's weird. Now you said that, I feel like I knew that. And it disappeared into the recesses of my brain. The thing I love about Ray Liotta, really, in Vice City more than anything, is that the character, he plays that character as a psychopath, and the script for the character in everything he does, from bumping into people on the street and all the sort of interlude sayings and things he does, he's a psychopath. So when in the game you get bored and start mowing down pedestrians and sniping people from 6 miles away, it fits because he's a psychopath. Whereas in quite a lot of open world games, you're supposed to be the nice guy, the good guy, and then you go, do you know what? I'm bored. I'm going to murder some people, and it doesn't work. It really jars. But and one of the reasons I think Vice City still remains one of the better open world games is because of that. Because you'd never get that disconnect of story and action because he's a psychopath. So whatever you do is completely fine because he's a psychopath. Right, I'll tell you what I did want to mention about Chase HQ. Do you know what I remember as a weird thing that was in the Spectrum version, the 1-8 version rather than the 48, was the intro animations? I don't even know, it's the sort of thing that you wouldn't even, you might have seen on a Windows screensaver in 1991, but it was a really big deal that it had this sort of, the text would come out in different ways. They did it with R-Type as well, but
oh, I love art.
Yeah, that's coming. But so it'd come out, so it'd like bounce onto the screen, or it'd come out one letter after the other. It'd come out different ways. And on the 48K Spectrum version, it wasn't on there. So clearly not enough memory for some really basic level text animation.
What that is, it's the guys who were given the 1-8 version to do. Were like, well, here's the 48K version. What bullshit can you add to it to make it a little bit different?
Didn't have to, mate, because it was, as with every other 48K version of games around that sort of turn of the 90s era, individual levels you had to load individually from the tape. And then on the 1-8, it's all there, all there, ready to go and be started. It was very common that this sort of Chase HQ era, I remember Chase HQ did it, I remember the Untouchables did it, or RoboCop did it.
I love the Untouchables on the Amstrad. It was a great
game. After the first level was atrocious, and then the next 4 levels were really, really good. But the first one was terrible.
Was the Spectrum the same as the Amstrad? Did you have 2 types of level? So the first level was like an awful platform game.
Yeah.
And the second level was kind of like Operation Wolf.
Yeah. And you rolled around at the front of the screen.
Yeah, you had a character at the bottom and rolled around. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know it was the same, but that first level, I don't know what it was like on the other systems, but the Spectrum was awful, and it was basically sheer luck that I ever got past it. But then, so that was that level, and then you had to load the tape for the next level, and that was it all the way through. And all these games were like that, RoboCop, Chase HQ, but only on the 48. On the 1-8 version, you loaded the whole lot in one go. So they never had to add stuff for the 1-8 version because it was simply good enough to not have to dick around with a tape. Because you basically, and they did it. We mentioned in the Street Fighter episode that Street Fighter 2 came out on the Spectrum and how terrible it was. Each individual fight you had to load separately.
I'm sorry, I can't imagine Street Fighter 2 on the Spectrum. It's beyond everything. It's just.
Do you know what the really annoying thing about, for me at least, about Street Fighter 2 on the Spectrum is in the way that Spectrum games can look good. It looks great in a still picture. It looks brilliant. Dear listener, please Google it now. ZX Spectrum Street Fighter 2. It'll be monochrome. It'll be black on yellow or black on green or something like that rather than black and white. But it looks great. And as soon as anything moves at all, it just goes to complete shit. It just absolutely disintegrates. But it's such a nice art style they brought to it.
I'll give you that one.
Yeah, it looks good, doesn't it?
The sprites look amazing.
Yeah.
In isolation, without it moving or doing anything, it looked great.
Yeah. Just leave it at that. Don't watch any videos or anything. Don't do it to yourself. You don't want to. just realised I've not told you, Dave, and I can just reveal to you and to the listeners out there, we now have Facebook and Twitter.
It's X, formerly known as Twitter.
The shit show formerly known as Twitter.
Okay, yeah.
Is how I refer to it. We are at Cocktail Mode on Twitter. It wasn't taken. So there's a Facebook page, Cocktail Mode. So yeah, we're on a lot of platforms. We're on, so Spotify we're on YouTube because Google Podcasts is going away. So YouTube is taking on podcasts. So there's basically, you listen whilst looking at our beautiful logo. Thanks again, Daniel, mate. Beautiful piece of work.
That is genuinely one of the best pieces of like simple design I've ever seen.
Yeah. It is great. That's my nephew Daniel.
Presumably with no input from you either.
No, not really.
I'm guessing he just cocktail mode, joystick, cocktail, done.
Yeah, kid's good. So you get to look at that while you're listening to us on YouTube. So we're on that as well. So I guess there'd be comments on that. So you could comment on that as well. Whether I don't know how accurate the listening numbers are or viewing numbers, they still call it on YouTube, but the Street Fighter episode is 132.
Fuck off. No.
That's what it says. It says 132. Podbean, which is where we host the... Thank you, Podbean, for existing. That's where we upload to, and then it distributes to all the other areas. They count it downloads. I don't know whether it's an actual download or a listen, but we've had about 40 an episode. Off that. Yeah.
I was expecting you to say like 4.
So thank you, dear listeners. Don't listen to Dave's dismissive if he loves it.
Don't paint me in that light. I genuinely would love for this to be a massively successful thing. I'm just not quite prepared for it.
I think if it's going to be a massively successful thing, you need to drink a little bit less during the podcast.
Wow.
See...
Been told.
I tell you what, though, you're drinking, but I bet you're not drinking the cocktail that you've chosen for Chase HQ.
I can't. I have the webpage open for the cocktail I have chosen. And to buy the base ingredients for it will cost me like £100.
What is it? Talk to me.
Okay. I went down the route of the name rather than the cocktail, which I know is something that you've tried to avoid because you don't want pun
I think you'll find what I said was that I like the idea of a pun cocktail. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So I'm happy for a pun cocktail.
Awesome. That I've got a role that I can now fulfill within this show. So yeah, I chose. Well, I don't want to say I chose. I found a cocktail that perfectly encapsulated something about the era in which Chase HQ came out. It's not specifically related to Chase HQ, and I can't honestly say that this song was playing at any point when I ever played Chase HQ, but I did find on a really obscure website, you may have heard of it, it's called diffordsguide.com.
No.
It's about cocktails. You probably won't know about it.
No, it doesn't sound like my sort of thing at all.
You might want to check it out. It's pretty good. But anyway, there's a cocktail on there called Beat This.
Beat This.
And the fact that you've reacted to that in any way at all means that it triggered a response in you that went, yeah, bomb the bass.
Yeah.
1989-ish.
Yeah.
Technically 1987, but we'll gloss over that. So yeah, I found a cocktail on there called Beat This, and I thought, more than anything else, I can very, very specifically remember the music that was playing in the arcades when I played these games. And it was very much 87, 88, 89, house music, rap music, very, very sample-driven tunes. But yeah, more than anything, the games of the time when Chase HQ would have been in the arcades, the only other thing that has any sort of reference on that time for me is the music that was playing. Because you might be playing Splatterhouse, you might be playing Street Fighter 1, although
why would you?
All of the various games that you played in any arcade around that time, the music that you were listening to wasn't necessarily the music in the game.
No.
It was music that was being pumped through just the PA system of the place that you're playing it in. And I can't for certain say that I played Chase HQ while listening to Beat This by Bomb the Bass.
But it's possible.
But yeah, it's very, very possible. Bomb the Bass they're like a capsule. They're genuinely a time capsule. 1988, 1989.
I mean, you say that. Their best single came out in the mid-90s.
I don't know about
that. Bug Powder Dust is an absolute banger.
Nah. Mega Blast. Mega Blast, definitely.
If you're out there, listeners, and you've never heard Bug Powder Dust by Bomb the Bass, do yourself a favour and listen to it. It's absolutely banging. And have a listen to Mega Blast as well. And let us know which you think is better. It's Bug Powder Dust. Tell me, I need to know how you build the Beat This cocktail.
The Beat This cocktail, interestingly, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to educate you right now. There's this website called Difford's
Guide. You've already done this bit, mate.
Have I?
Yeah.
Shit. The ingredients for the Beat This, it's rum.
Yeah.
Vanilla, falernum, whatever the fuck falernum is, with bitters and beetroot juice. To be fair, it sounds quite nice.
But I mean, just for bringing up Bomb the Bass, mate, and letting us talk about I'm a fan. I've only really listened to the album from whatever Bug Powder Dust is on. I've not really listened to much before then. Clear, it's called. There's a track called Tidal Wave on that album, and one of the writers credited is Minnie Driver. How random is that?
Well, like the Olympic archer, Minnie Driver.
Nobody knows any Olympic archers, mate, except you.
Yeah, Minnie Driver. That's the only one I know.
You know the other Minnie Driver.
It's the same Minnie Driver. It's not a joke. Minnie Driver, the actress, the Hollywood actress, is an Olympic archer.
Is that true?
Yeah. It's not a joke.
Well, fucking hell.
If I can say something with, no latency whatsoever, genuinely, I know this to be a thing, you know it's true. When have you ever doubted me when I say something that quick? Fuck! No, it's not Minnie Driver. It's Andy McDowell. It's the other one.
Oh, brilliant. I love it.
So, do you have a cocktail in mind for this game?
So my choice, and it did take me a while to exactly. It's not something that jumps out at you, is it? Chase HQ, pair it with a cocktail, but that's the challenge, isn't it? That's what we're here to do. That's what it's. If it was easy, it wouldn't be a thing.
That's one of the things that I took away from this. What element of the game do you look at? Do you look at the driving? Do you look at the fact they're cops? Do you look at the fact they're ramming other cars?
In every version of the game, by the way, just as a brief segue back onto the game itself, I remember loving and still loving for the nostalgia of it, that just the hand coming out the window and throwing the light on the roof.
That's one of my favourite things about the entire game.
It's a great touch, isn't it? It's such a nice little touch, and that's the sort of thing I think classic games did a lot more and a lot better. That's not what I chose to focus my cocktail in. What I chose to think about, I got there eventually. I just let it sit in my brain. And we talked about it earlier, how Chase HQ there is a lineage there, quite a clear lineage to Outrun. It came from Outrun happened, Top Speed or Full Throttle, whichever you want to call it, happened, and then Chase HQ happened. And it really is as straightforward as that. And Outrun is a classic. In the same way, when we talked about Pac-Man, I talked about how Pac-Man could be a daiquiri, in which I chose daiquiri because a daiquiri is a classic and Pac-Man is a classic. So, and that's the link. And I've done a very similar thing here because Chase HQ isn't a classic. It's not Street Fighter 2. It's not Pac-Man. We agreed earlier today that it's not seminal. It's not a moment. It's a great, great game, and I love it. And I challenge anybody to not love it. But I don't think it's got the gravitas of something like Outrun. And so for me, that's what I went with. So if you take that gravitas of Outrun in the same way I took Pac-Man, said that's a daiquiri, and you took Outrun, you said that's good, that's a classic drink as well. On that, I said Chase HQ is basically it's a larification of Outrun. It's basically gone a bit wild and it started ramming other cars, and it's noisier, and it's because Outrun's a very laid back game, and it's a bit blary, it's a bit out there, it's a bit 80s, and so I've gone for the Porn Star Martini. Because it's a larification of a classic in the same way Chase HQ is. It's Porn Star Martini. You get a shot of Prosecco, and along with your vanilla and passion fruit martini, and it's become a bit of a Larry drink as you do your shot, and just being called a Porn Star Martini is a bit. And I just think that the way that Chase HQ got a bit noisy with Outrun, the Porn Star Martini gets a bit noisy with a martini, and that's what I've gone for. Maybe it's my age, but when I hear the word porn star, I think of the 80s. It's a very 80s word.
Yes, no.
Maybe it just was for me. And I think that's it. And in case you don't know, Porn Star Martini is you make a normal martini with vanilla flavoured vodka, a bit of fresh passion fruit, you sit on top of it, and that's pretty much it. You can add some extra vanilla syrup if you fancy it, but I think you get a bottle of Absolute vanilla flavoured vodka that will give you all the vanilla you'll ever need, bit of lime, and then you have your shot of Prosecco on the side, and it's as simple as that, really. And that is where we're going to leave it for this week. Please come back again next time out when we've decided we're going to be talking about Revolution Software's classic point and click Broken Sword. In the meantime, please do try and check out their socials. We've not had them tested yet, so try and message us there if you can. Thank you very much for listening, really appreciate it, and I hope you come back and listen to us next time. Cheers.